Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our next Bible study, our next edition of the life of Jesus. We're currently working through the New Testament, talking through the life of Jesus, going through all of the things that he did from before his birth to his birth, and now we are into his life. We just finished up the story of Jesus' birth last week, which is really funny because we finished it up in January when Jesus' birth is like the focus of like Christmas, but that's where we are. Also, for those who are watching this on YouTube and are not watching this live, I do live stream all of these Bible studies, so you can check them out. The link will be down in the description of the YouTube video down below, and that is what this is here. This is the live stream chat. These are streamed both on Twitch and YouTube, and I put the chat up on the screen so that way as questions or different things come in and we talk about what we are reading, then you guys can see what is talked about and how these will interact with the passages from today. So, without further ado, we're going to dive in. Last time, we talked about how God protected Jesus during his birth. How the wise men came and wanted to see Jesus, but King Herod wanted to kill Jesus, and he provided a way for Jesus to stay alive by telling the wise men to go a different route. And then when Herod freaked out, he sent Mary, Joseph, and the baby off to Egypt and to protect them further until King Herod had died. And then when his son Archelaus had taken over as king, God told them to then go to the city of Nazareth, where they then went back to. And not only does this show a major fulfillment of a lot of prophecies that happen regarding Jesus' life, we also see just the way that God provided for his son and knowing that he was in danger, but through providing these different methods of protection, Jesus survived. And now Jesus gets to live his life. We're going to be fast forwarding about 10, 12 years-ish from the last passage. I'm assuming around 10 years, because now he's about 12 years old. And if you would like to follow along, we're going to be in Luke chapter 2, starting in verse 41. I am reading out of the English Standard Version of my Bible. You certainly do not have to read along that same version. You can use whatever version you would like. If you have any questions about what is being read for those who are watching this live, please do not hesitate to say anything. I also do have, obviously, I have the scripture right here next to us, so that way you can also follow along if you do not have a physical Bible. And without further ado, we're going to dive in. Starting at verse 41. Now his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up according to custom. And when the feast was ended, as they were returning, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem, and his parents did not know it. But supposing him to be in the group, they went a day's journey. But then they began to search for him among their relatives and acquaintances. And when they did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem, searching for him. After 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking questions. And all who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers. And when his parents saw him, they were astonished. His mother said to him, Son, why have you treated us so? Behold, your father and I have been searching for you in great distress. And he said to them, Why were you looking for me? Did you not know that I must be in my father's house? And he did not understand what he spoke to them. And they did not understand the saying that he spoke to them. And he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was submissive to them. And his mother treasured up all these things in her heart. And Jesus increased in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man. So, this is a shorter passage than what we've normally been covering in our Bible studies. Jesus is going to Jerusalem with his parents, Mary and Joseph, to go and celebrate the Feast of Passover. Now, the Feast of Passover, for those who don't know, is a feast that actually dates all the way back to the Old Testament time. This is a feast that was done in celebration of the Israel's of the Israelites' delivery from slavery out of Egypt, which oddly enough is really interesting that that's where that comes from, because that's what I just read in my own personal reading this morning. I'm at the 10 plagues is where I just started, but that is what I'm reading about, is the first over Passover. So every year the Jewish people get together and they celebrate Passover, where they do their sacrifices, different things like that. And so basically how this would work is families would all get together. They would all travel the long distance from Nazareth to Jerusalem or wherever they were going to, and then they would celebrate the feast of Passover. They would then talk about their they would celebrate the feast of Passover. They would do sacrifices, and then they would all travel back. It became this whole big thing. All families would get together. So on their way back, it wouldn't have been uncommon if Jesus were to stay and like hang out with his cousins, or kind of be in this big group, because he'd be in a big family group. It wasn't like they were just traveling, just the three of them. And Jesus chooses to stay behind. Now, this is actually something I'll probably look into, because it's kind of interesting when I'm thinking about. Excuse me. So Jesus, obviously, not only is he Mary and Joseph's son, he is also the Son of God. And he knows that at the end of Passover, they all travel back together. But Jesus stays behind in Jerusalem. Stays behind and is asking questions and learning from the religious leaders, learning from the scribes and the Pharisees. And after 3 days, they find Jesus in the temple. Now, I'm not a father, but I already know, just like from the few moments that my dog has gotten out, and I'm freaking out. Because I'm like, holy cow, where is my dog? Where did he go? Even though most of the time, anytime he's gotten out, when we're at my in-laws, he just goes from the backyard and loops around to the front yard. It's actually kind of cute. And he just sits at the door until we let him back in. He's a good boy. But anyway, I freak out when my dog is gone for 10 minutes. I can't imagine the amount of worry that Mary and Joseph would be having at this time. Like, I mean, I don't even know, that's just wild to me, that 3 days they go without finding their son. At this point in time, they didn't have Life 360 to track his phone. They had nothing. If he was gone, he was gone. So the amount of worry that would be going in through their head. And this is where things get really weird. And I feel like this is kind of a question that I've always had. I'm going to actually look this up on my phone. See if there's any historical context behind it. Because Okay. I have found it thanks to scholars. So, Jesus stays behind to learn. And a lot of people have actually used this as a way of saying, well, Jesus didn't listen to his parents. So because Jesus didn't listen to his parents, he sinned, therefore everything that he did is null and void. But the thing that is kind of interesting about this passage is there's a lot of misunderstanding. Like, the use of that argument is a misunderstanding when it comes to Jesus' character. Because Jesus, not only was he God, he was also, not only was he human, but he was also God. Like, he was both 100% man, 100% God. We're in Hebrews. I don't remember exactly where it is, but there are multiple verses that talk about the what is called the hypostatic union of Jesus, the way that he is both God and human. And it can be really difficult to look at that and think, how can something be both God and human, especially if, in the instance of Jesus, like going without sin and being able to not go back to Nazareth with your parents and that not be considered a sin. Well, the important part about it is what happens when Jesus is found. Sounds good, Gooby. Thank you so much for hanging out. So, in verse 49, it says here, Jesus says to Mary and Joseph, "Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house?" So, Jesus at this point is 12 years old. He is beginning to prepare for the life that God is giving him, that he came to earth to do his ministry and to eventually be the perfect sacrifice. And obviously, there's still the humanity of Jesus, and that's something he has to prepare for. And so how does he prepare for that? He studies like anybody else, like any other kid. He studied. He studied the scripture. He studied carpentry, because that's what his father did, and so that's what he did until he began his ministry. And he learned, and he grew. And the importance of this passage comes down to the important things that we do in life take time. For Jesus, he did not start his actual ministry until he was 30 years old. But until then, he was preparing. He was studying. He was continuing to educate himself so that way he could be the best person that he could be, and that he could fulfill God's plan in the best way that he is supposed to. And for a lot of times we can go through life and we can think, things are taking too long. This is taking too long. I want to do my thing. I want to do what God has for me. But the important part to remember is that God prepares us. We don't go through life and aren't just like, all right, we're going to do these things and we're going to be great, and then it's just going to happen right away. That's not how it works. If that was how it works, I would have been a full-time streamer a long time ago. But things don't just happen overnight. They take time. You have to prepare. And that's what Jesus is doing right here. He is preparing for the work that God has in store for him. And honestly, guys, this is something that the more I think about this concept, the more I think about my own life. Because like right now, I work as a customer service rep for a internet company. And don't get me wrong, I love the job for what it is. It provides for my family. I can work from home, take care of my dog. There's a lot of parts of that job that I do honestly really, 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 really like. But there's still a lot of parts of the job that is very, very difficult. It is not easy. Wow, excuse me. To do the job that I do, because I deal with a lot. Customers aren't always the happiest. Systems aren't always working. But this passage is just a good reminder to me that God is still preparing me for what he truly wants me to do, what that's going to look like. And who knows? Maybe this is what God has in plan for me as I work from home for Metronet for the rest of my life, and then I do this as the thing that I care about the most. Because if it were up to me, I would be doing these Bible studies, this digital ministry, full time for the rest of my life. That's what I would want to do. But obviously God has another plan. And in order for God has a perfect plan. And in order for that to be achieved, it takes time. It takes work. And sometimes it can be really, really frustrating. But at the same time, when we dive deeper into what it is that Jesus is going to be doing and the work that he does, you can see the prep and the studying and all of that paying off. And I'm not saying that it will work this way for everybody. I don't want to say that. But I do just want to give you guys this reminder that God doesn't work instantaneously every time. In fact, I think that when God is preparing us for the things that he really, really, really wants us to do, those things are going to be the things that take a lot of time, that are going to be almost like painstakingly hard to focus on. But it is always important to remember that God does these things for a reason. God prepares the way for us by having us do things to prepare. You know, in verse 52 is where it all sums up. Jesus increased in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man. Jesus continued to grow. He continued to learn, and he continued to increase until the time was ready for him to begin his ministry. So I want to encourage you guys today, don't try to rush God. We can be patient knowing the things that God is doing and focusing on the important things. The things like the prep work. You know, for anybody who'll be watching this who's involved in like event production and stuff, those events take time. They take work. And I think that is the thing to remember. So I want to leave you guys with that. It can be hard to wait. And sometimes the studying and the prep work can be grueling. But keep looking at how this passage and this story is going to continue to progress as we get further and further into Jesus' life. You will see the effects of patience, the effects of all of the behind the scenes work that seems like it might not get anywhere. And you can see the amazing things that God does. That's going to be where we end off this one. I know it's a little bit shorter. It's a shorter passage. But next week we'll be able to do it. Next week we're going to be diving into our next passage, which is going to be... I have it prepped a little bit, basically like an order of Jesus' life, so that way we are good to go. But we're literally going to be going on with this for a long time. We're going to be probably doing the life of Jesus for close to a year, going through each of these events. But our next moment is when we are going to be beginning Jesus' ministry. We will be reading all the different accounts of the beginning of Jesus' ministry, and we will see just how all of the things that we've talked about before, all of the prep work, all of the studying, the birth, the protection, the prophecies that date back hundreds of years, all now begin here. So I want to thank you guys again for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, I really, really hope if you guys feel any of this at all tugging at you, please feel free to reach out. I would love to be able to continue to talk about Jesus in any capacity with you. And I just want to leave you guys with this once again. You are loved. You are valued. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. And we will see you all later. Have a wonderful day, everybody.